Okay, my mom called and interrupted me, but we're back. Okay, where were we? We were still talking about season 4. Sarah gets her soul back. Constantine repays his debt to Oliver for Oliver saving his life on the island. Blah blah blah. This is kind of like where Legends season 1 picks up from. It's like a little bit after this because obviously season 1 is happening concurrently with the second half of season 4 of Arrow because Sarah doesn't find out that Laurel's dead until the finale of season 1 of Legends. So yeah, they fight Damien Dark. Damien Dark gets killed. No, Damien Dark doesn't get killed. Damien Dark escapes like the weasel that he is. He comes back a lot though because I don't know. No, he does die because they continuously are bringing him back to life like all the time. He's definitely dead. At the end of season 4, Oliver definitely kills him. So at the end of season 4, Oliver and Felicity are kind of in shambles. John is kind of like mad. Oh, I forgot to tell you about Flashpoint. I can't remember when Flashpoint ties in. If it's after, I think that's like season 2 of The Flash. Which, maybe that's the end of season 2 of The Flash. And so it ties into season 5 of Arrow. Anyway, season 2 of The Flash is like a whole thing where they have to fight evil Harrison Wells because they find out that Harrison Wells isn't actually Harrison Wells. He's just some guy pretending to be Harrison Wells. And so Harrison Wells from Earth 2 comes over and they do this whole thing. I don't know. The Flash isn't as important except for when it comes to the crossovers. They all just like to whine a lot, and they fight a lot of like multiversal people because Harrison Wells keeps coming over from different universes. I think season 2 of The Flash is when we meet Wally, and Wally is Iris's secret brother that she never knew that she had, and Joe's secret son that he didn't really know they have. Lots of people have like secret children. Gotta build the drama. It is the CW, so secret children. Secret children. Lots of secret children. So Wally comes in, and at some point Wally gets powers, Wally gets powers, but I don't quite like remember how, but he becomes Kid Flash. And he's dating Jessie, who's Harrison Wells from Earth 2's daughter, and Jessie also has powers, and she's a speedster, and her name is Jessie Quick, and they're like a whole thing, and like Harrison Wells and his daughter are a whole thing, and I'm pretty sure season 2 is when they have to go to Earth 2 and fight the thing that's like trying to kill Harrison Wells' daughter, and I don't quite remember what that is, because I don't think it's not still the Reverse Flash. I don't know, they fight lots of stuff. The Flash people fight so many things. I didn't pay as much attention to The Flash as I did to Arrow, because I liked Arrow a lot more. Okay, so at some point at the end, I think the end of season 2 of Flash is when he does Flashpoint, which is like he goes back in time and he saves his mom. So Barry learns that he can run it. If he runs fast enough, he can travel in time. So he goes back to his past and he saves his mom from being murdered. And so when he goes back to the present, this of course has created a parallel universe, and they call it Flashpoint. And it is later referred to the thing that Barry did a couple times in the Legends when they bring up Flashpoint, and they're just like, oh, is that the thing that what we're calling what Barry did? Because everybody at some point knows that it happens because it's like a whole thing, and it screws up a bunch of people's lives. So it gives Caitlin metahuman powers, and so she becomes Killer Frost, but it's kind of like a Hulk, Dr. Banner, or Jekyll and Hyde situation where she doesn't really know that she can transform and be Killer Frost. It takes them a while to figure it out. And it's like a whole thing. Yeah, so Killer Frost, and then when Barry comes back to the present, he's like messed up a bunch of stuff, and he accidentally killed Cisco's brother, so Cisco gets really pissed at him, which I think is fair. I think that's fair. But it also like affects stuff in Arrow because it changes some of the things about their history, and it's just like little changes. Like all of a sudden John doesn't have a son anymore. Now he has or doesn't have a daughter anymore. Now he has a son, and his daughter's name was Sarah because she was named after, obviously, Sarah Lance. And now he has a son whose name is John Diggle Jr. And this becomes important because there's like a bunch of stuff that they fix in Flashpoint later in season 8. Season 8. Yeah, season 8. So season 5, I'm pretty sure this is when the Bratva come in. So this is when we learn about the last year that Oliver was missing, and he does a bunch of like Argus, like assassin stuff. He goes and hangs out with the Russian mob, becomes a Bratva member for like a minute, and that's when we kind of meet Alexei a little bit more, and Alexei is in Star City and like asks Oliver for all these favors. But the really important stuff that happens in season 5 of Arrow is that Felicity joins like a cult, and it's like a kind of an evil hacker cult, and she thinks she's being a good person, but really they're like murdering stuff and like doing bad shit, and it becomes like a whole point of contention between Oliver and Felicity's relationship. But there's a really good episode. God, who was the villain in season 5? It was that dick guy who was the really attractive one. Oliver runs for mayor and becomes the mayor, which is why in the first episode of season 2 of Legends, Nate goes and breaks into the mayor's office. But he runs against this other guy who turns out to be super evil. God, I can't remember what his name is. It's something like very, very frat bro-y. But they kind of are friends, so nobody expects that this guy is the one that's like trying to kill everybody. This is also when Oliver and his company kind of make a new team. Or maybe that was season 4. I don't know. At some point we meet Dinah Drake, who is the new Black Canary after Laurel gets killed, and we meet Curtis, who worked for Felicity and is like a tech guy, and we meet what's his name? Wild Dog. Renee, who becomes Wild Dog, and Renee has a daughter. Renee lives in the Glades. He wears a hockey mask and fights with guns. And Curtis is a genius, and he's called Mr. Terrific, and he fights with technology. And then there's this other guy who's like a scarecrow mummy thing and has like these enchanted, like an enchanted cloak. And he like dies. His name is Rory, and he dies. And there's a girl who turns out to be evil. She like is kind of cool and shoots arrows, but then it turns out that she was like brainwashed and is one of the bad guys. Yeah, so the guy that they fight in season 5 is like really mean, and at the end of the season he takes them all back to Lian-Yu and like tries to kill everybody, and he also kidnaps William and William's mom, and William is Oliver's son. And so that's when William has to come live with Oliver and Felicity because Oliver gets his mom killed. And that's like a whole thing because Oliver doesn't know how to be a dad to a 12-year-old. He's like real bad at it. He's very, very terrible at parenting. But there's a really good episode in season 5 of Arrow, which is my favorite one because Oliver and Felicity, it's like a bottle episode in a way because they get trapped in the bunker and they have to like work through all their issues, and like Oliver almost dies and Felicity has to save him, and like he's also got to save her, and they have to like talk a lot, and it's great because it's super romantic and sweet, and it's great. It's awesome. It's my favorite episode. I've watched it like a billion times. I think it's season 5 episode 22 if I remember correctly. So Felicity joins like this hacker cult, and then it creates lots of tension because Oliver is not happy with her being in a hacker cult, but she's like, I'm my own person, I can do whatever I want. So she does whatever she wants with the hacker cult until they're like, turns out that it is actually really bad stuff that they're doing, so then she stops being part of the hacker cult. But yeah, then they all get taken to the island and almost killed, and Oliver has to save everybody to absolve his guilt, but he gets William's mom killed, and so that's a whole thing for season 6. You know, I'm like skipping over a lot of stuff, but obviously if I don't remember it, it's not that important, so ignore that. This is also like Supergirl. So season 5, the season 5 crossover is like, I'm pretty sure this is where we left off with Legends, is the episode where Sarah comes back and she's like, but right now our friends in Star City need our help. And And so that's the crossover episode for season 5 of Arrow and season 3 of The Flash and season 1. I think season 1 of Supergirl. Maybe season 2. No, I think it's season 1. And that's when they have to fight the Dominators. And the Dominators are just like casual aliens that kind of show up and like are just trying to casually invade. And they have to use the Legends time ship to like travel around to try and stop the Dominators at different points in history. Because the Dominators are super evil and they kind of look like rat creatures. Think of like General Grievous, but like not with 4 arms. That's what they look like. But they're not metal. They're creepy skeletal aliens. And they like to kill people. So, and see, that crossover is when they fight the Dominators. And that's the first time that they do like a massive crossover where they have the Legends and Supergirl and the Flash and Arrow all together in one giant episode. My favorite crossover that they do is the mini crossover in season 3, episode 17 of The Flash, which must be season 2 of Supergirl, because that's the episode where they do the musical episode, and it's really funny because it's Darren Criss playing just like this random guy, and he puts Kara, Supergirl, and Barry into like a sleep state trance thing where they have to like go to this world and sing songs, and they're like in a mob kind of situation. So it's like a miniature Glee reunion, but also they just like sing Moon River and like other stuff, and it's good. And so musical episode, gotta love a musical episode. And then they have to get saved via the power of true love, and that's where they fix all their relationship problems, because at this point Barry and Iris are dating for real, and Kara and Mon-El, who is her one true love, are dating. Mon-El has to go away at the end of season 2 of Supergirl because they dilute the earth with too much carbon monoxide and it's poisonous to his race of alien, so he has to leave. But he like becomes a time traveler and later comes back but has a wife. It's just like a whole thing with Kara. Okay, so Supergirl season 1 is like the origin story of Supergirl, obviously. So Kara Zor-El is Superman's older cousin, and the story is that they were both shot in escape pods from Krypton when it was being destroyed, but Kara's pod gets knocked off course, and so she arrives like 10 years later. No, more like 20 years later than she was supposed to. So she's still like a 13-year-old kid when she arrives on Earth, but Kal-El, aka Clark Kent, like arrived as a baby and then grew up and is like a fully formed human adult person by the time she makes it to Earth. So she gets taken in by Kal-El's friends, the Danverses. So the Danvers have a daughter named Alex, and Alex later works for the government and goes through a sexuality identity crisis, which is, you know, pretty cool because Maggie was awesome. And she works for like the alien division of the government, which is called the DEO. I don't remember what it stands for. Like Earth Defense of Earth Organization or something like that. But yeah, okay, so Kara has like spent her whole life being totally normal. She works as like a copy editor at a famous fashion magazine. She's got this friend named Win. Who is he played by? He's played by some kind of well-known actor. I don't remember his name, but he was in The Last 5 Years with Anna Kendrick. Right, so Kara, like, in the first episode, you know, she doesn't use her powers for anything. She's just, like, chill, living as a person, hiding who she really is. You know, Superman's her cousin, but he's over in Metropolis, and she's in National City, and she's just, like, been normal. She's got a sister, they're BFFs, kind of, but, Alex gets on a plane, and the plane gets, like, hijacked and taken down, and so Kara makes the decision to save Alex, essentially. And so she exposes herself to having powers, so then she and Win go into this whole, like, you know, season 1 is basically like their superhero montage of of Kara being, like, learning how to be Supergirl. Lex Luthor is in it at some point. Lex Luthor's hot sister is in it at some point. Her name is Lena. She's cool. She comes in later because she becomes kind of friends with them, but then when she finds out that Kara is actually Supergirl, so she doesn't like Supergirl at first, but then they, like, kind of start working together, but then it takes them a long time for Kara to tell Lena that she's Supergirl, and then Lena gets really fucking mad about it, which I think is fair, because it was, like, 3 years later. So Alex works for a super secret government organization called the DEO. Alex's boss's name is John. John is also an alien. He's known as the Martian. He is from, like, another dead world where the green Martians and the white Martians fought each other, and the white Martians are, like, important because they come back a lot, like, and then they have to learn that, like, all the white Martians aren't bad, so it's kind of like a whole racism thing. But the white Martians killed all the green Martians, and so John escaped to Earth and has been hiding among them because he can kind of shapeshift a little bit. And so he's been hiding among them for, like, a hot second, and later he reveals himself and blah, 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 and they've got, like, a whole trio of super friends and everything. But Supergirl works with the DEO, and nobody knows that Supergirl and Kara are the same person until later, and then eventually all of them just work for the DEO, and there's this guy named James who Kara kind of has a thing for, and James was friends with Superman, and James is a photographer, and he does, like, lots of photography of Kara as Supergirl, and later he becomes this guy, like, named the Guardian, and he has a shield, and he pretends he can fight crime, but he really sucks at it because he's, like, a whip-ass bitch. James and Kara have, like, a thing for a while. There's also this really cool character named Kat, and she is the head of the company that Kara works for, and she's, like, a super powerful female boss lady, and she and Kara are, like, kind of friends, but also she's kind of rude all the time because she's cooler than everyone, and she knows it. So she becomes, like, kind of friends with Kara as Supergirl, but doesn't know that Kara is Supergirl. It happens a lot. In season 2 of Supergirl, that's when Mon-El comes, and he's from another, like, sister race of aliens that were, like, close to Krypton, but not quite Krypton, and all of them are trying to, like, kill everybody and be evil, and his mom is a jerk, and Kara and Mon-El eventually fall in love, but then Mon-El has to leave because the Earth's atmosphere becomes poisonous to his race of alien, on purpose. They purposely poison the air to get rid of the invasion force. But Mon-El has to leave, and then he gets sucked into a time pod thing. It's a whole other thing. We officially crossed, like, by the hour mark, just so you know. We're, like, an hour and 20 minutes into this. Okay, where were we? I suppose now I'll talk about season 1 of Legends, because we're kind of, like, catching everybody up to where we are currently in season 2 of Legends with the Dominators. Oh, the DEO is important because they fight a lot of aliens, so when they figure out how to teleport and, like, get people from the other Earth to come help them fight the aliens, it's a big deal. Alex meets this girl named Maggie, who's a police officer, and has, like, a whole sexual identity crisis where she discovers that she's been a lesbian this entire time. God forbid. And she and Maggie are super cute together. They eventually break up. Alex apparently has a better, newer girlfriend in the last season of Supergirl, but I didn't watch it, so I don't remember her name. Anyway, we like Maggie. We miss Maggie. Maggie was awesome. She and Alex were super cute together. That's relevant because Maggie breaks up with Alex around the same time that Alex meets Sarah for the first time, which is season 3 of Legends, season 4 of The Flash, season 6 of Arrow. That's Crisis on Earth X. Okay. Oh, season 1 of Legends. That's what we're talking about. So season 1 of Legends spins off directly from the crossover from season 4 of Arrow and season 2 of The Flash with Kendra Carter and Vandal Savage. So Rip Hunter, who you've met, who is played by yet another Doctor Who actor, Arthur Darvill, obviously, is a time master from the end of time, and in the year 2166, Vandal Savage and his protege underling guy, whose name I don't remember, decide that they're going to take over the world, and in doing so, they kill Rip's wife and son. So Rip is on a personal vendetta to avenge his wife and son by killing Vandal Savage at an earlier point in history, so that Vandal Savage doesn't eventually go on to kill his wife and son. Now, Rip is on the run kind of from the Time Masters because they obviously decided that he wasn't allowed to go back and change the past, but he was not happy about that, and he wants to go back and change the past. So Rip kind of leaves the Time Masters and decides to go off on his own, and he doesn't steal his time ship, he takes his time ship, which is the Wave Rider with Gideon. And he takes his time ship back to 2016, aka present day, in Star City, where he recruits a group of B-list superheroes, which is Kendra and Carter, Hawk Girl and Hawkman, straight out of the crossover, Heatwave, and Captain Cold, which is Leonard and Mick, and Sarah, who he picks up in Siberia, where she's drinking Russian alcohol and looking all around badass in her coat. She's fresh out of coming back to life, getting her soul back, dealing with the bloodlust, all of that stuff. And then Ray, whom you obviously know because you're in love with him. Ray, who after they discovered him as just having shrunk himself, kind of just fades into oblivion in the story. He's no longer relevant after that, except for the fact that he's back to life. It's not raining anymore, which is good. Am I missing someone? Oh, I'm missing Jefferson and the Professor Martin Stein. So okay, so Jackson Martin are come back in season 1 of The Flash, maybe season 2, but they're relevant because Dr. Stein or Professor Stein and this guy named Ronnie, who worked at Star Labs. They both worked at Star Labs when it exploded. Ronnie was thought to be dead, and Ronnie was Caitlin's fiance. And so Ronnie was thought to be dead, and Caitlin and Dr. Stein worked together. I think Dr. Stein might have been working on the particle accelerator project, but anyway, so the Firestorm Matrix is Dr. Stein's pet project, and something happens to it while they're during the particle accelerator explosion, and Ronnie is supposed to be dead, but he's not actually dead. He's just part of the Firestorm Matrix now. And so eventually Ronnie does actually die, and that's when Jax comes in because they have to find somebody to substitute for Ronnie in the Firestorm formula so that it doesn't kill Professor Stein. So that's a whole subplot in the Flash. But that's really all you need to know is that Professor Stein and Jax have to are bonded together, and they have to be because that's how they keep this nuclear or whatever fusion thing inside of them stable, is between the two of them. They're not very good at it, but need to do it. So Rip recruits Kendra, Carter, Ray, Sarah, Mick, Len, and Martin and Jax to travel with him through history to try to kill Vandal Savage. He recruits them actually because they're all nobodies who have no impact at all on history if he pulls them out of the timeline, but he tells them all that it's because in the future they're heroes and this is how they become heroes. So basically he lies to them and blackmails them into joining his revenge crusade through history, and none of them are super thrilled about it. Mick and Len decide to go because they want to steal stuff in the past, and Kendra and Carter go because it's super important that they take out Vandal Savage because he's the one that keeps trying to come back and kill them, so they're all directly connected. Sarah goes because she has nothing better to do, / she goes to talk to Laurel, and Laurel talks her into giving it a shot because, sisterly bond and all of that stuff. And Ray goes because he's got nothing else going on in his life, and Professor Stein wants to go have an adventure because he's old and boring, and Jax doesn't want to go, but Professor Stein basically drugs him and kidnaps him, so they are all on the ship. So in season 1 they travel to different points of history that trying to find Vandal Savage to kill him before he can kill Rip's wife and son. It's important to know, I think, that Rip wasn't supposed to have a wife and son, because as a time master who's like swore an oath and dedicated to time, he's not supposed to have personal attachments. And his wife Miranda was also part of the Time Masters, so they kind of like secretly were together, and no one was supposed to know about it, which is why the Time Masters aren't all that torn up that she got killed, because they were like in huge trouble anyway. So they travel to different points in history, and they meet lots of different versions of Kendra and Carter. They also run into a younger version of Professor Stein, because they go to school and they smoke weed with him for a hot second. That was a funny episode, because Sarah still kicks everybody's asses even though she's super high. And they go to different points in history. Carter dies pretty early. You know, they kind of just like get him killed. I don't remember how. It's like super dumb. And he just dies. He dies like in like the second or third episode. Which means then they're like, Kendra, who doesn't really know who she is, doesn't have control over her powers, is like trying to fix her past without the help of the guy who remembers all the stuff, because their like whole curse thing works where like every time they're reincarnated, they don't remember who they are until they're together, and until they remember who they are, they don't have access to their hawk god powers. So Kendra like hasn't had enough time to figure this out by the time Carter dies, so like she's basically useless for most of the show. She's just like angsty and emotional, but you know, she's okay. There's a whole like segment where Sarah's trying to teach her how to fight, but Sarah still has the bloodlust, so she like kind of, you know, not too great. The important episodes that happen is they meet young Stein, who we saw in season 2 already. He comes back again in season 3, and then in one of the episodes, they go back to 1958, and Mick has been being like a huge problem for them at this point, and he like breaks a bunch of rules and like pisses everybody off, and so Len is supposed to go kill him, essentially, put him down, but he decides not to kill Mick, and he just like, you know, leaves him somewhere. Mick then gets picked up by the Time Masters and turns into a time bounty hunter, Kronos, the time bounty hunter Kronos, who pops up a couple times because that's who the Time Masters have sent to stop Rick, is this time bounty hunter named Kronos. So we don't find out it's Mick until later. But it's all because Len didn't kill him when he said he was going to kill him, but he doesn't, and so Mick comes back as a time bounty hunter that's trying to kill everybody later. So in the episode when they're in 1958, Sarah falls in love with this nurse lady who's super hot, and gives her own sexual awakening experience. But the important thing about this is they get stuck in 1958 because Kronos attacks the ship, and so they take off with Len and Professor Stein and Jax on board the ship. So they kind of leave it, but they leave Ray and Kendra and Sarah in 1958 for 2 years. And so during that time, Sarah goes back to the League of Assassins, and they fix her bloodlust, but she basically gets like re-indoctrinated into the League of Assassins because she can't stand being around Ray and Kendra because they're annoying, which, you know, is fair. Ray and Kendra have like a little like love thing that happens because Ray's kind of in love with her, but like she has an immortal soulmate kind of deal, so they can't really be in love, but they are. At the same time, it's like the whole like screw destiny moment. But so they get stuck in 1958. They have to go re-rescue Sarah from the League of Assassins, which is when they find out that Mick is Kronos because he attacks them and he kidnaps Leonard, and Leonard has to saw off his own hand in order to save the team from Kronos. Not saw it off. He has to freeze it so he can break out of the handcuffs. So he freezes his hand and then shatters it and like essentially amputates his hand so that he can get out of the handcuffs to stop Mick from killing everybody. It's super traumatic. But at the end, they do get Sarah back from the League of Assassins, and she like seals her own fate in that way that you can do when you're a time traveler, where she's like, oh, but Ra's al Ghul, make sure that your daughter, the one that's not born yet, is in the South trying to see at this specific time so she can save me from being shipwrecked so that I can come back and be your best assassin. And it's just like a whole thing. I don't know. It's cool. I liked that episode because it was Sarah focused. And I like Sarah. So then they keep going. At some point they stop going back to the past because it's just like not working. And so instead they go to the future and they try to kidnap Vandal Savage's like underling boy, the one who like Vandal Savage uses to vicariously take over the world through. They meet Ray's secret twin brother who like was only in that one episode, but then like never comes back in the episodes like when they go to Ray's past, which is confusing, honestly. But Ray apparently has a twin brother. His name is Sydney. He's relevant because they see a bust of him and it's some kind of relation to Ray that is in this future. So they go to the future and they're trying to stop Vandal Savage there by killing the younger version of the guy who eventually takes over the world with Vandal Savage. Except they can't do it because they're murdering a child, and the team basically is like, Rip, this is so fucked up. And he's like, maybe you're right. Maybe this is a little too much. So that's just like a thing. It's like a whole... Season 1 is just like a whole thing. But then we watch the end of Season 1. So they get imprisoned by the Time Masters after they don't kill the boy. And they all get like separated and locked up. There's an episode in here where Lynn and Sarah get trapped on the ship because the ship gets attacked and then they almost freeze to death, and that's kind of how they start becoming friends. There's like a weird like kind of forced little love thing happening between them that doesn't really go anywhere, obviously, because Leonard dies at the end of Season 1. So they go to the Time Masters. Time Masters lock them all up. They decide that they need to destroy the Oculus so that they can all have free will and the Time Masters can't control them anymore. So they do that. They still don't save Rip's son and wife. They're very dead. But they blow up the Oculus and they basically destroy the entirety of the Time Masters in the process. So the Time Masters just like aren't a thing anymore, which is why they're allowed to continue, because they're like, oh man, well somebody has to help history. Somebody has to protect history. So they are the team that decides that they're going to do it in lieu of the Time Masters whom they all killed. Yeah, Len dies. Sarah finds out that Laurel is dead. Kendra and Carter go away, which is okay because we don't really like them very much. That's fine. And that leads into Season 2, which starts with Nate going to Mayor Oliver Queen. Okay. Now we're at Season 4 of The Flash, Season 6 of Arrow, Season must be 3 of Supergirl, which is when we meet Lena for the first time. Supergirl only has 6 seasons. It got ended after the 6th one. Arrow has 8. The Flash just finished Season 7, and so did Legends. Legends just finished Season 7, which means the Flash just finished Season 8. So it's all connected. So Season 6 of Arrow, I don't remember who the bad guy is. There's just so many bad guys. They're all just like angsty white boys. At some point they fight the Russian mob, blah blah blah. This season is important because William has to come live with Oliver after Oliver got his mom killed. So Oliver has to learn how to be a good person via being a father. And like taking care of his angsty teenage son while also trying to fix his relationship with Felicity, while also trying to be the Arrow and also the mayor. And it's just like very messy. It's very, very messy. It does not all work out. Quentin is the mayor at this point, maybe. Oliver gets like fired from being the mayor because he gets arrested briefly for being the Green Arrow, or put on trial or something, so he's not allowed to be mayor anymore. Anyway, Quentin is at some point the mayor, and Renee works with him. And Renee and Curtis and Dinah aren't like super important characters. They're kind of just like there a lot. Yeah, they're just there. But the weird thing about this season is that now that they've told the entire story of the island, which was, the first 5 seasons jumping back and forth to the island, they start jumping forward to the future instead, which I don't remember if that starts in Season 6 or Season 7, but like, it it's a whole angsty thing with their secret daughter and all of this stuff. That might be season 7. But yeah, so Oliver and Felicity are trying to figure their shit out. Oliver and William are trying to figure their shit out. Everybody's trying to figure their stuff out separately and together. There's a bad guy. He attacks them a lot. It's very dramatic. The crossover for this season is Crisis on Earth X, which is where they get invaded by the Nazi Earth. So everybody gets together for Barry and Iris's wedding, and the wedding gets crashed by Nazis. And so the crossover here is a bunch of them get kidnapped by the Earth X people, and they have to go escape from Earth X and come back to the real world, or their Earth, where the Nazis are trying to invade and take over everybody, and they have to fight like the evil versions of Oliver and Kara and Barry. And it's like very dramatic because that's like the legit crossover that has everyone in it, because it's got Supergirl and the Flash and Arrow and Legends, but not Black Lightning yet because he doesn't come in until later. But they all are like together on one Earth for the first time, and it's very fun, very cool thing, because they all just like meet each other and hang out, and like they give Kara a portal so that she can travel back and forth easier. So Barry and Iris get married, and Oliver and Felicity get secret married. Secret, but not really, because John marries everybody. Everybody gets married in season 6 of Arrow, basically, during that crossover. Everyone's married. They all live happily ever after. At the end of season 6, though, Oliver gets arrested, and he gets sent to a creepy prison. And he spends most of the beginning of season 7 of Arrow in this prison. This is also when alternate Laurel comes in, and so the Laurel Lance from Earth 2 comes over to Earth 1, and she's like a criminal mastermind for a little bit. And she's way cooler than normal Laurel was, because she's got like a platinum blonde pixie cut and no moral values. But because Laurel is dead, she decides that she's going to pretend to be real Laurel. Or no, Quentin decides that he's going to reform her, basically. Quentin is like, you could be a good person. You're my daughter, technically. And so he decides that he's going to reform Laurel and turn her into a good person by making her pretend to be normal Laurel. So she's got to pretend to go be a lawyer, which comes into play in season 7 because her pretend lawyering is what gets Oliver eventually out of prison. So Oliver gets like locked in jail, and it's like super dramatic because, anytime you get locked in jail is. Also at the end of season 6, William leaves. William decides that like he would rather go live with his grandparents, so he leaves. Kind of his own volition, and Oliver's like upset about this because Oliver realizes that he's actually a terrible parent, and it's kind of just like generally upsetting to everybody that William decides that he doesn't want to be with Oliver anymore. Like fair. He did get attempted murder a lot, so he's only 14, and Oliver was a really bad dad, so it's valid. His opinions are valid. So Oliver gets started in prison, and it's a super bad prison because they solitary confine and beat him and run all these experiments on him, and he eventually escapes with Laurel's help, and it's tragedy. Maybe William waits until midway through season 7. I don't know. William leaves at some point or another. While Oliver is in jail, everything kind of goes to shit in the city because Evil Laurel's gang is there, and all these bad things are happening, and no one knows how to stop them. And this guy that was connected to Slade, I think it's his son, shows up and is murder, and Oliver can't do anything because he's stuck in prison. At the end of this season, Quentin gets shot and killed, and that's a dramatic episode because they can't save him, and they bring Sarah back just to be able to say goodbye. The second Laurel remembers to call Sarah and tell her that her father is dying, which is a whole thing. that's pretty much Arrow. And then the Flash continues. After Flashpoint happens, Barry kind of fucked up a lot of stuff, but he and Iris still, like, get married. And Caitlin has this whole, like, subplot where she and her doppelganger, like, split up, and then she decides that she just wants to be Killer Frost all the time. And, like, Cisco goes through this whole thing because he's in love with this girl from this other universe, and they have, like, 7 more Harrison Welleses that show up, and Iris is just, like, generally really annoying as a character. She's, like, the Laurel of the Flash. She thinks she's super important, but really she's, like, pathetic and can't do anything. There's something with, like, a newspaper from the future where it says that Barry Allen disappeared. At one point, he gets trapped in the Speed Force for, like, a year, and they have to figure out how to get him out. And then in season 6 of The Flash, his daughter comes back from the future, and her daughter's name is also Nora. There's a lot of people named Nora in these shows for some reason. It's not that great of a name. But yeah, so Nora, his daughter, comes back from the future to do a bunch of stuff with the murdery thing and help her dad out because her dad, like, you know, disappeared and she never got to know him. So she comes back to do it. I guess in season whatever they're on right now, their son also comes back, and that's who Jordan Fisher plays. And so Nora and whatever their son's name is, are like bros that come back to help their parents when their parents were younger. But, you know, to each his own. Barry gets trapped in the Speed Force. That's all dramatic and stuff. There's all these time wraiths that are constantly trying to kill everybody because they fuck with time, which means the time gets mad. I don't think there's anything really important else. Everybody has powers at some point. Harrison Wells from a different universe shows up, and he's actually just like this dipshit punk bitch writer guy who knows absolutely nothing about anything. There's this guy who can stretch that shows up because they're trying to have more people join their team, and so they needed another white dude representation. So that guy comes. What else? The season 7 Arrow Flash crossover, they do Arrow Flash and Supergirl that time, but the Legends aren't part of it. And they actually reference the fact that they're not part of it in that episode, which is the season 4 mid-season finale. It's called Legends of to Meow Meow, and that's the one where there's the cat and the puppets. So that one is when they meet the Monitor for the first time, and the Monitor is like kind of a dick, and he's like a all-powerful being from the dawn of time who can write destinies with his magic book, and he becomes relevant in the Arrow final season 8. But they meet him in season 7 because they do, God, I can't remember what it was called, but it was something dumb. And basically, Barry and Oliver wake up one morning and realize that they've switched places in each other's lives. So like Oliver is now in Barry's life, and Barry is now in Oliver's life. So it's like a Freaky Friday situation. But no one can tell the difference, so they go to Earth 38 to find Kara so that she can tell the difference between them. She's the only one that knows because she's from a different Earth. And then they like have to go fix it, so they have to find the Monitor with the book, and then they have to go to Gotham City and meet Batgirl. And they do fix it, and Oliver finds out that Kara and Barry are destined to die via the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is the season 8 crossover, then the end of Arrow. So Oliver finds out that Barry and Kara are destined to die, and he says, "No way, Jose," and decides that he's going to make a deal to take their place. So he does that. Doesn't tell anybody. Let's see. The end of season 7 of Arrow, Felicity finds out that she's pregnant. She and Laurel form like a weird friendship during this season. At the end of the season, Felicity and Oliver move to like a secret cabin in the woods, and Team Arrow's kind of like all broken up because Oliver basically has been like, well, I'm gonna die next year, so nothing else we can really do about that. And so he and Felicity kind of disappeared into the middle of nowhere so that they can protect their daughter. And this is when you start seeing the flash forwards, because we made their daughter before they made their daughter, and her name is Mia. And in the flash forward segments, we go to a dark apocalyptic future where Mia and William have to save Star City from an evil computer program that Felicity created in the past to help protect Mia from people trying to kill her. It's like a whole complicated thing, but they're both traumatized because their dad disappeared and they were raised all alone and separated from each other, and it's all traumatic. And Mia's played by Kat McNamara, and she's pretty great. We like Mia. But in this like post-apocalyptic future, Earth 2, Laurel, and Dinah, and Renee's daughter Zoe are like part of this secret club called the Canaries, the Canary Network. So they're like the vigilantes of this apocalyptic future world, and they like help Mia save Star City and find Felicity and stop the evil control AI program. And that's like it's like a long story, but I honestly don't know what happens next in The Flash, because I stopped watching after the season when their daughter was there. So I don't know what's like what's happening in the final season, except that their son also comes back, and they had to send their daughter home, but it like didn't really work. So it was a whole conundrum, and then she ends up coming back anyway with their son. And then, okay, so the final season of Arrow is Oliver traveling around with the Monitor and the future version of his daughter. So he doesn't get to hang out and raise his daughter, but he does get to know her because they take a future version of her and they travel around and help at different points in the timeline that the Monitor tells them to, that all leads up to Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is all of the multiverse gets destroyed by this thing called the Anti-Monitor, and when they try to stop the Anti-Monitor from getting created, they actually create him in the first place. And Lex Luthor is there, and he's evil, and they have to go around and find these things called the Paragons, of which Sarah is one. And it's all of the shows, but by the end of it, it's only a couple of the characters because everybody gets killed. Basically, everybody just like stops existing, and they have to restart the universe. And that's important only because at the end of it, everybody is on like the same Earth. There's no more parallel universes, which means now Kara and Barry and Oliver and the Legends are all together in one universe, and there's no more parallel universes. And also Oliver dies. This is when Oliver gives up his life to save everybody and the whole universe. And it's very dramatic. I'm trying to think if there's anything else you need to know. I think that might be it. Right, so Legends Season 2 picks up kind of in the middle. It is Season 5 of Arrow and Season 3 of The Flash, I want to say. And they all, they don't really, cross that much, so you don't have to really watch all these other things to know what's happening in Legends, except for the crossovers, which, again, aren't, super important. They're kind of fun. The Crisis on Earth X one is fun. It's a good one. The Dominator one is okay. It's kind of lame, but the Crisis on Earth X one I would watch all of because that one's pretty good. And then Crisis on Infinite Earths you probably should watch all of when we get to that, because that one's an important storytelling plot device. Let's see, in Season 3 of Supergirl, that's when Lena comes in and they have to fight Lena's evil mom, and then they also find out that Krypton hasn't actually been destroyed. It's just a small floating rock and no longer a planet. So they end up being able to go back to Krypton, and Kara gets to talk not to her mom because her parents are dead, but I think it's her aunt. And maybe her aunt is evil too. I don't know, there's a lot of shit that goes down with Kara and her family, and her real family biologically, and her fake family that she was adopted into, and all of that nonsense. Yeah, I think that's it. We're like hitting the 2-hour mark, and I think that's pretty much everything that you need to know about the Arrowverse. Oh, Batgirl. Batgirl isn't really relevant. She only comes in like that one section of the season, Arrow season 7 and season 8 crossovers. The real story with Batgirl is that, so Kate Kane is Bruce Wayne's cousin, much cooler, much sexier cousin, and she takes on the mantle of Batgirl because Batman has disappeared. She gets recast in season 2 because the actress who was playing her, what's her name? Something Rose or Rose something or something like that, decided that she didn't want to be fucking with the CW anymore, so she got replaced and they bring in a new Batgirl. And I haven't really watched Batgirl, so I don't know. Black Lightning is in the season 8 crossover. He's a superhero from some like small Midwestern town who can shoot lightning, and he was like hella famous until he decided to give up being a superhero to help raise his children, but then like takes back up being a superhero, and his daughters end up both having powers, so they get to hang out and help him. What else? I really think that might be it. Anyway, Legends is the best of all of these shows, obviously. I'm only a little bit biased because it's also my favorite personally, because Sarah's cooler than every other character, and she's significantly cooler once she gets to Legends than she was when she was on Arrow, because when on Arrow she was a plot device, and on Legends she's like a real character, so we like her a lot. I told you about John Constantine. He comes back later. He's important. The Crisis on Earth X1 is actually important to Legends because stuff happens that affects their second half of season 3 and season 4 plot lines, so you will have to watch that one. But you don't really need to know anything about the other characters to do it. Wally at one point leaves The Flash because Keaton Lionsdale didn't really want to be on it anymore, but he comes later into Legends too. I think that's it. I think that is everything you need to know about the Arrowverse so that you can watch Legends. Okay. We're done here.